Hello and welcome to English for Philosophy students. We are studying 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, and we are in our 41st lesson in that book. We are also in our 10th lesson in the rule number 5, and today we will finish rule number 5. Usually, it is a good idea when you finish a large chapter like this to overview the entire chapter. But tonight, the segment we are reading contains a very complete summary. So we are going to spend our time reading and talking about the rest of the chapter. And if we have time at the end, maybe we will look back at the headings for the smaller sections of this chapter. So let us begin where we left off last week with a summary of principles. Now, I want to point out that he does not say a summary of his ideas. He says a summary of principles. In raising children, there are no hard and fast rules. It is an art to do this relationship well. But there are principles that should be considered. So, the first disciplinary principle is limit the rules. This means have few rules. Be the opposite of the United States government that has so many laws you cannot ever avoid breaking them. Rather, have a few smart, intelligent rules. Limit the number. Principle number 2. Use minimum necessary force. The words minimum and necessary are key. Minimum meaning you want to use the least amount of force or violence or punishment that you can, as long as you achieve the purpose of modifying the child's behavior. The goal is to change the child's behavior and make them behave acceptably. You must use enough force to achieve that goal. So necessary force means the amount necessary to be effective. Another way of saying this is minimum effective force. Okay, here's a third rule, or principle. Principle. Parents should come in pairs. When I read this before, I thought that he was saying you must have a husband and a wife, male and female. Pair means two, which are connected. As I read it right now, I wonder if he means, okay, you can be two men or two women, you just need two. It is not clear from this sentence whether he means it must be mother and father. Pair simply means two. And here is his explanation of what he means and why. Raising young children is demanding and exhausting. Because of this, okay, let's talk about that sentence first. Raising young children. If you live with a child and you are the authority, the adult in charge, then it is said you have raised the child. That is what we mean in English. You are the responsible adult in charge of the discipline of a child. It could be a grandmother or an uncle or anybody. If they were the primary influence and authority, they are said to have raised the child. So, raising young children, young probably means under the age of 7 or 8, maybe. Young often means preschool, under the age of 5 or 4. So, raising young children is demanding. Demanding means it takes a lot of work. It's not easy and exhausting. It makes you very tired. Because of this meaning that previous sentence, it's easy for a parent to make a mistake because the task is demanding and exhausting. Insomnia, hunger, the aftermath of an argument, a hangover, a bad day at work, a bad day at work. Any of these things singly can make a person unreasonable, while in combination, they can produce someone dangerous. Okay, so we will look at the list in one moment. But for now, let us see what he says about it. He says that any one of the items on the list, that's what singly can mean. Any one thing on that list can make a person unreasonable. Unreasonable is a bad thing to be. It means you are not being fair. While in combination, that means if you have 2 or more of the things on the list, 2 or more of the things on the list are true, they can produce someone dangerous. This makes me think of a parent who might physically abuse a child, who might injure a child, hurt them through violence, or even kill them. So let us look at the list of things that can make you behave in this way. Insomnia. This means the parents cannot sleep. It may be organic, an illness of the parents, they just can't sleep naturally, or it could be caused by the children. A baby that cries because it has stomach pain all night for months. This can cause a parent not to sleep. It could be considered insomnia. Hunger. So when the parent first comes home from work and they are hungry, and immediately the child is screaming and demanding, whack, they might lose their temper. The aftermath of an argument. So if the parent has had an argument, a verbal conflict with someone, they may be feeling angry afterwards. The aftermath is the time after something happens. A hangover. So this means you have been drinking alcohol the night before and now you feel sick. You have a headache. you're sick from drinking the night before. A bad day at work. Just a difficult day. Any of these things singly can make a person unreasonable, while in combination they can produce someone dangerous. Under such circumstances, it is necessary to have someone else around to observe and step in and discuss. So remember, we are supporting, or Jordan Peterson is supporting his statement that parents should come in pairs. He is giving evidence for his rule. So he is saying under such circumstances, i.e., when you have insomnia, hunger, an argument, a hangover, etc., under those circumstances, it is necessary to have someone else, another adult, around to observe. So the other adult says, "You're not feeling well. Let me take care of the children." To step in. What I just described was stepping in. They observe that their partner is not well, and then they offer to take over. They intervene. That is stepping in and discuss. So after dealing with the children, two parents can talk about what happened and come to a good understanding. This procedure of doing all this will make it less likely that a whiny, provocative child and her fed-up, cranky parent will excite each other to the point of no return. So if you have two people, it is less likely, it is not likely, that the whiny, provocative child, whiny is meh, 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 meh. Provocative, like they're trying to get a reaction. And her fed up, cranky parent. Fed up means has had enough. Cranky means irritable. Parent will excite each other, push each other's buttons to the point of no return. The point of no return is when the parent has become violent and has injured the child, maybe broken bones, or even, God forbid, killed the child. That is the point of no return. Parents should come in pairs. So the father of a newborn can watch the new mother so she won't get worn out and do something desperate after hearing her colicky baby wail from 11 in the evening until 5 in the morning for 30 nights in a row. That's a long sentence. The whole thing supports the ideas that parents should come in pairs. You need two, so that the father can watch the mother to make sure she is not getting worn out. That means very tired. And do something desperate. We have had cases where mothers have killed their children. Fathers need to be aware when the mother is becoming crazy. Sometimes women have a mental disorder called postpartum depression after having a baby, and it can go on for months or years. And a woman in postpartum depression is not safe to have the care of the baby full time. The father needs to be vigilant and watch to make sure his wife is functioning well. Even if the wife is not having a medical issue like postpartum depression, any woman who is kept up all night hearing her colicky baby wail from 11 in the evening until 5 in the morning, 6 hours of screaming, for 30 nights in a row, that's a full month, any woman would become kind of crazy with that. You need another parent. When my first baby was little and cried in the night, my husband sometimes took her out in a car so that I could sleep. That was nice. 2 parents is best. Jordan goes on. I am not saying we should be mean to single mothers, many of whom struggle impossibly and courageously, and a proportion of whom have had to escape singly from a brutal relationship. But that doesn't mean we should pretend that all family forms are equally viable. They're not, period. Okay, so complex sentence. So he is not saying that we should be mean to single mothers. He is saying parents should come in pairs. But if you are a single mother, it is not your fault. He is not saying you are bad, and we should not say the woman is bad if she is single. He adds several pieces of information to show that the woman is not guilty, usually, and is, in fact, a wonderful hero to do this all by herself. So it is not her fault, even though all family forms are not equally viable. The best family form is 2 parents, mother and father. If you do not have that, you do not have the best. That's his point here. He wants to make sure we know he does not blame a woman who is without a partner. Partly because, all right, now look at this construction. Many of whom struggle, a proportion of whom have had to escape. Those of you who wish to write should study that construction. It is the correct grammatical way to present this list of characteristics. So we are not going to be mean to single mothers, many of whom, so all single mothers as a group, many of them struggle impossibly and courageously. So they're working at an impossible task with great courage. And a proportion of whom. So we have the group of single mothers, many struggle, and a proportion. A proportion does not mean many. It's non-specific. It just means some of them. Some of them have had to escape singly. In this case, it means they have had to escape by themselves, alone, from a brutal relationship. So many of them have fled from a violent man. One reason this construction, many of whom, a proportion of whom, is good here is that it is parallel. He could have said, I'm not saying we should be mean to single mothers, many of whom struggle, and lots of them had to escape. Doing a parallel construction is elegant writing. So it's good to be parallel. Do the same kind of construction. Okay, and his main point is all family forms are not equally viable. Pairs is best. And he says they're not equally viable, period. He says this period to emphasize there is no more discussion. This is an accomplished fact. It is not just my opinion. This is how it is, period. Full stop. Okay. Let me see what's here. Okay. All right, now we're getting into the fourth principle. Just a second. Okay, here's a fourth principle. One that is more particularly psychological. Parents should understand their own capacity to be harsh, vengeful, arrogant, resentful, angry, and deceitful. A big problem in parenting is self-deception and deceiving the world. In the very beginning of this chapter, the very first subtitle was, "It's Not Okay." And he talked about how a child will come into a social gathering and misbehave very badly. And the adults will say, "It's okay, it's okay." But it's not okay. Parents pretend that everything is fine when their child is misbehaving, and they don't punish and they don't correct because they are afraid to, and they are afraid they'll look like bad parents. But it embarrasses them. And so they pretend to be smiling, but really they are angry. And they will not admit that they are deeply angry at their child. They will not admit that. They will cover it over and say, "I am patient. He will grow. This is age-appropriate behavior. This will pass." And deeply they are angry. And this anger comes out as social rejection of their child. So he is now saying parents need to come clean and admit the truth that when their child misbehaves, it makes them hate or dislike their own child, as well as everybody else dislike the child. So let us look at the list. Parents should understand their own capacity to be harsh. Harsh is, "Get out of my way," to a child. Vengeful. Vengeful is to take revenge. Like you're mad at your child, so you elbow her. Arrogant. So proud and not humble. Resentful. That's continuing to keep anger against somebody. Angry and deceitful. Particularly self-deceitful, but you'll act like, "Oh, I'm not mad at you," while you are passively and passive-aggressively doing mean things to the child. Okay. Very few people, all right, so now he is going to talk about his principle. Very few people set out consciously to do a terrible job as father or mother. So set out means they intend from the beginning. My intention is to be a bad mother. I'm going to be a bad mother. Very few people say that at the beginning. Almost no one. Everybody wants to be a good parent when they start out, when they begin. So everybody wants to be good, but bad parenting happens all the time. How does that happen? This is because people have a great capacity for evil as well as good. Capacity means they have the ability to do it. This is, and because they remain willfully blind to that fact. Remember, he said parents should understand this. They are willfully blind to the fact that they have the capacity to be angry and mean and vengeful toward their child. They're willfully blind to it. They say, oh, I'm impatient sometimes, but I really love him to pieces. I love him. No. People are aggressive and selfish, as well as kind and thoughtful. So people are a blend. They can be aggressive, they can be selfish, they can be kind, they can be thoughtful. Different things can be brought out of you by different children or different situations. For this reason, no adult human being, no hierarchical predatory ape, so this hierarchical predatory ape is what he calls a human being. He is saying that human beings, evolutionarily speaking, are hierarchical, meaning we respond to authority and we exert authority. Predatory, meaning we're going to get what we want. Ape. So we're the most sophisticated of the apes, according to him. So, no human being, a hierarchical predatory ape, can truly tolerate being dominated by an upstart child. So, if a little child refuses to obey, refuses to do what you say, you're trying to put on his diaper, he kicks you in the face, you're trying to feed him, he spits it in your face, and he is very small and you're very big, no human being will tolerate being dominated by an upstart child. Upstart is referring back to this hierarchical concept. The person in charge is always being challenged by someone who wants to dethrone them and take their position. And that person is an upstart. So, no one is going to put up with being dominated by an upstart child. Revenge will come. He's saying any human being will take revenge on their child. 10 minutes after a pair of all too nice and patient parents have failed to prevent a public tantrum at the local supermarket, they will pay their toddler back, with the cold shoulder when he runs up excited to show mom and dad his newest accomplishment. We will take revenge by being mean to the child later when the child doesn't even know why. The child has no idea why you're being mean all of a sudden for no reason. Because he really doesn't even know that throwing the tantrum in the supermarket was bad. These nice parents didn't even tell him it was bad, maybe. But they'll take revenge later with their anger toward him. Enough embarrassment, embarrassing the parents by being a bad kid. Bad kids make parents look bad and embarrass them. Enough of this embarrassment, disobedience, and dominance challenge. and even the most hypothetically selfless parent will become resentful. So, when the parent is being embarrassed, when the child is being disobedient, and when the child is challenging your authority, you tell him to do something, he refuses or does the opposite. Enough of that, and any parent, including the most selfless or hypothetically selfless, someone who thinks they're selfless, or someone who wants to be selfless, or someone who is trying to appear selfless, or even trying to be selfless, hypothetically selfless. Any person will become resentful. And then the real punishment will begin. Real punishment, it could have begun when the child did the tantrum, if you had taken effective action to curb the misbehavior. But because you didn't, later you will punish the child from your heart with other angry words or actions. And that will be the real punishment. Resentment breeds the desire for vengeance. So if you are resenting, you're holding anger toward a child, you will want to get revenge. You will want to hurt him because he was bad and you're angry. Fewer spontaneous offers of love will be offered. Okay, so these are the ways. What follows are the ways that are acceptable for a good parent who thinks they're being a positive parent and never punishing. These are the ways they actually punish. Willfully blind to them, denying it all the time. This is what really happens. They give fewer spontaneous offers of love. So in other words, they aren't as loving to a child who has misbehaved, with more rationalizations for their absence. So they'll say, oh, I was just tired, or I'm just hungry, or he was bad and he's nasty, or he's prickly. I mean, they'll explain it in some way that they are not affectionate, but they will not be affectionate. Fewer opportunities, notice the parallel structure. We have fewer spontaneous offers of love and fewer opportunities for the personal development of the child will be sought out. So maybe parents will not get piano lessons for their child because that kid is a brat. Or maybe they won't bring him to the library for a book club for children because he misbehaves all the time. So the child's life becomes smaller and more restricted. His opportunities for growth diminish because he can't behave well. So he can't go to where he would have been challenged to grow even more. A subtle turning away will begin. Subtle means the parent you will not be able to point to any one thing and accuse the parent, but it will be true. They are turning away from their child. They don't like their child. A subtle turning away will begin. And this is only the beginning of the road to total familial warfare, conducted mostly in the underworld, underneath the false facade of normality and love. So this is the beginning of total familial warfare. Total war. Conducted mostly in the underworld. So not out in the open, but just by little sharp words, little mean things you do. And pretending under a false facade of normality and love. So let's look at the beginning again and see what this was about. This was the fourth principle. Parents should understand their own capacity to be harsh, vengeful, arrogant, angry, and deceitful. Parents should not pretend to be nice and patient and loving to a misbehaving child. They should understand that even they are going to be angry if the child misbehaves, as will the rest of the world. They need to be honest about the fact that the child cannot be allowed to misbehave, or the child will be punished one way or another by the world and even by the angry parent. Knowing this, we put a high priority on training our children to behave well so that we ourselves don't abuse them. Okay, so this frequently traveled path, and what frequently traveled path? The one to total familial warfare conducted underneath the false facade of normality and love. That frequently traveled path, so a lot of people do that, is much better avoided. Good idea not to do this. A parent who is seriously aware of his or her limited tolerance, and limited tolerance means I cannot put up with my child doing this anymore. If the child continues to misbehave and it's worse, I'll go crazy and maybe hit him. So if a parent knows that their ability to tolerate is limited, and the parent knows that his own capacity, the parent's capacity for misbehavior when provoked, so the parent knows that they can't really tolerate it and they might actually abuse their child. This parent can therefore seriously plan a proper disciplinary strategy, particularly if monitored by an equally awake partner. So parents come in pairs. And never let things degenerate to the point where genuine hatred emerges. So if you know your limited tolerance and your capacity for misbehavior, then you can plan a proper disciplinary strategy. I know some people who are prone to violence, who when they feel themselves getting angry, they'll turn on the television for the children and go to their room because they know they might abuse the children. A parent needs to know their own limitations and then make a good, proper disciplinary strategy. And if you have a partner, like a husband or wife, they can help with this. And this will never let things degenerate, so it won't get as bad. It won't get so bad to the point where genuine hatred emerges between the family members. Beware. So it's a warning. There are toxic families everywhere. This is a ready danger for all of us. They make no rules and limit no misbehavior. So they won't say no to a child. They won't prohibit a child from misbehaving. But the parents lash out randomly and unpredictably. So the parents get angry, but not at the misbehavior, just generalized. And the children live in chaos and are crushed if they're timid. Or they rebel counterproductively if they're tough. This is bad parenting. It's not good. It can get murderous. Okay, so there's a fifth and final rule, principle. Fifth and final and most general principle. And that is this. Parents have a duty to act as proxies for the real world. Merciful proxies, caring proxies, but proxies nonetheless. A proxy is a stand-in. So if my child steals, it is my responsibility to impose some kind of sanction which will be similar to what the world will impose if he keeps doing that as an adult. So I will tell my child, if you do this again when you are an adult, they will put you in jail. So I am going to put you in your room. You're going to stay there for 2 hours and think about what you did. I am being a proxy for the real world. I am letting the child know what this behavior will do to them in the future. If they stay in bed and don't do their work, they might lose their job and have no money. If they talk back to their teacher, they may get kicked out of school. So whatever is gonna happen in the world, we need to let the child know and make the rules of the home somewhat similar so that the child is living in reality with us playing the part of society. That's what it means. So this obligation to be a proxy for society, to represent society to the child, this obligation supersedes any responsibility to ensure happiness, foster creativity, or boost self-esteem. So he's saying it is more important that they know what the world will tolerate and they conform themselves to the necessary standard of behavior. That is more important than that they be happy today or that they have self-esteem or foster creativity. If their idea of creativity is to steal stuff and turn it into a sculpture, you don't say, "What a lovely sculpture." You say, "You can't steal. Take it apart and give it back." That's what it's saying here. It is the primary duty, the first duty, the most basic duty of parents to make their children socially desirable. Now, I would say the primary duty is to make them holy and good with God, moral, virtuous, godly. I would say those things. But this is a secular book, and we don't know what Jordan Peterson believes. He is saying that the basic duty is to make them socially desirable. That's also good. It will help them in life if they know how to behave in a way that makes others like them and want to help them. But for me, the primary duty is to raise them in what the Bible says is the fear and admonition of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That is respect and awe of God. That's the first. And then admonition of the Lord is the rules, the moral virtues. So fear and admonition of the Lord is what I would say. But he says you should make them socially desirable, and that will provide the child with opportunity, self-regard, and security. So on a human level, sure. It's more important even than fostering individual identity. That Holy Grail, so the Holy Grail of individual identity, can only be pursued, in any case, after a high degree of social sophistication has been established. So you don't prioritize letting the child's individuality emerge, because that will come later. You prioritize training the child to the norms of proper behavior socially. Okay, we're almost done and we're almost out of time, so let's continue. The good child and the responsible parent. A properly socialized 3-year-old is polite and engaging. She's also no pushover. She evokes interest from other children and appreciation from adults. She exists in a world where other kids welcome her and compete for her attention, and where adults are happy to see her instead of hiding behind false smiles. She, will be introduced to the world by people who are pleased to do so, pleased to present her to others. This will do more for her eventual individuality than any cowardly parental attempt to avoid day-to-day conflict and discipline. So he's saying a well-socialized 3-year-old will have such a good experience in the world that it will do more for the development of a proper self-esteem than if the parent just told them they were special and applauded them and never disciplined them. Discuss your likes and dislikes with regards to your children with your partner. So he's saying, talk openly about what you like about your child and what you don't like to your partner. Or, failing that, meaning if you can't do it with your partner, do it with a friend. But do not be afraid to have likes and dislikes. Many people will deny that they have any dislikes. Oh, I just love them the way they are. No, you should have some likes and dislikes, and then you have to evaluate them. So it says, you can judge suitable from unsuitable and wheat from chaff. You realize the difference between good and evil. So if you have something you dislike about your child, you are an intelligent adult. You can decide whether it's a personality thing that you don't want to change, or whether it's a character flaw that needs to be trained out of them. Having clarified your stance, having assessed yourself for pettiness, arrogance, and resentment. Okay, so being careful that you're not just being angry because the child embarrassed you. Making sure your heart is right. You take the next step and make your children behave. So you decide, this is something I must discipline. They need to stop doing it. Not because I don't like it solely, but because it's unacceptable. So you take responsibility for their discipline as a parent of young children. You take responsibility for the mistakes you will inevitably make while disciplining. We all make mistakes. You can apologize when you're wrong and learn to do better. You love your kids, after all. If their actions make you dislike them, think what an effect they will have on other people who care less about them than you. Those other people will punish them severely by omission or commission. Don't allow that to happen. Better let your little monsters know what is desirable and what is not, so they become sophisticated denizens of the world outside the family. This whole paragraph is a review of the concept that if you love your child, you will inform the child, you'll teach them and train them about how to behave so that they will be successful. A child who pays attention instead of drifting and can play and doesn't whine and is comical but not annoying and is trustworthy, that child will have friends wherever he goes. So this may be sort of like a list of short rules that Jordan finds important. Try to get them to pay attention, to play without whining, to be expressive and funny but not annoying to adults, and to be trustworthy. That child will have friends wherever he goes. His teachers will like him, and so will his parents. Everyone will like him. If he attends politely to adults, he will be attended to. So if he pays attention to adults, adults will pay attention to him. He will be smiled at and happily, instructed. So the adults will teach him things that will be helpful to him. He will thrive in what can so easily be a cold, unforgiving, and hostile world. If you want your child to thrive in the world, you must train them at home, which involves making them unhappy sometimes at home. But in the long run, the purpose is to teach them to behave properly. Clear rules make for secure children and calm, rational parents. So make for means create. Clear rules create a situation that fosters secure children and calm, rational parents. Clear principles of discipline and punishment balance mercy and justice. So we need both mercy and justice so that social development and psychological maturity can be optimally promoted. Clear rules and proper discipline help the child. They don't hurt the child. They also help the family, and they help society to establish and maintain and expand the order that is all that protects us from chaos and the terrors of the underworld. These are references to former chapters, where everything is uncertain, anxiety-provoking, hopeless, and depressing. There are no greater gifts that a committed and courageous parent can bestow than the joys of security for the child. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Okay, that ends our study of rule number 5. 11 lessons. Next week we begin with rule number 6. See you later.